I found a business that looks really, really cool and I'm really interested in buying it. Anyway, so in this week's video, the update number 2, we're going to look at this business that I found and why I think it's a good business. We are going to look at some conversations that I had with financiers because obviously I'm going to need to finance this business. I don't have enough money to buy it cash. And then we're going to talk a little bit about credit scores and stuff like that. So let's dive in. But before we go there, my name is Cully. I have decided in 2025 I'm going to buy a small business in Canada, Vancouver, because I hear all of these experts saying that that's what you need to do, and they seem to make it look really easy. So let's figure it out. Anyway, subscribe and follow along if you're interested in this journey. Right, first things first. Now, the business that I found that looks really good. Unfortunately, I can't give you all the details on the business because I'm under an NDA, but what I can do is I can give you some numbers and I can give you broad information around it and the things that makes me think that it's a really good business to buy. So firstly, broad information about the business. It's a lo-fi, low-tech business, not a lot of involvement in tech. I don't see any black swan possibilities where the business can completely fail or fall out of it. I think it's got a good growth potential. As long as you keep on doing what you're doing, it'll be great. You know, very similar to laundromats, I guess. Not a very glamorous business, very low staff complement. The owner only works like 20 to 30 hours a week, so very low involvement from the owner, which is also great, which means I'm not actually buying myself a full-time job. And all of that looks really, really good. Now let's have a look at the numbers. I'm just going to pop it into this little handy spreadsheet that I created to see whether it is viable for businesses. There's a complete other video where I talk about this spreadsheet and how to use it and where you can get a link to it. So it's linked up there at the top. All right, so in the spreadsheet, this business had an average EBITDA of $170,000 over the last 3 years. The business has got a growth trajectory of over 15% per year. It's been going for 7 years. So, it's steadily growing, going for 7 years. And over the last 3 years, it had an EBITDA, although this is not an EBITDA, this is a SDE, seller discretionary earnings, which is slightly different. There's another video that talks about what seller discretionary earnings is. So let's just change it to SDE. All right, so SDE of 170,000 average over the last 3 years, which is something that the bank asked, so that's why we used that. It's got a price of $400,000. I spoke to RBC and it looks like we need to put down a deposit of 25%, so that comes to $100,000 deposit. Interest rate, I don't know what I'm going to get. Currently, BDC Development Bank of Canada said that they are looking at like 10 to 12%. I've got a bad credit record. We're going to get into that later in the video. So I'm probably looking at about 13% per year. And then the management fee and the holdco expenses, all of that I explain in the video about the spreadsheet where you can download the spreadsheet. And once again, you can get the link either in the description or I think it might be up there. Which brings us to the business financials. So that means if I need to borrow $300,000 at an interest rate of 13% over 5 years, I'm going to pay down $81,911 per year, or $6,825 per month. So in other words, the business needs to make enough money to pay that off. And with a average SDE of $170,000 after taxes, we have operational income taxes and other stuff, it still shows a surplus of $73,000. Now, I mean, that is phenomenal. That is spot on where we want to be. A business that's growing, that earns enough money to actually cover the shortfall over the last 3 years, cover the payments, interest and bond loan repayments, and still make money on top of it. So cash flow business, baby, that's what we want. Now, if we just go and change this to the last year's SDE, which is 250,000, it actually shows a surplus of 140 grand, which is even better. So anyway, that's why I love this business. I think it's got great potential, And I decided to move ahead with it, or to explore further. Now, obviously, there's a lot of steps that still needs to happen. Number one, I need to find the deposit. Number two, I need to find the financing, and that's where this goes. Let's talk about the financing next. I spoke to BDC Bank, Business Development Bank of Canada, last week, and they gave me some information. Now, BDC, when it came to the financing, they seem to be a little bit more focused on my personal finances, so they're looking at myself and they're like, yeah, what's your credit record? What's your personal income and expenditures? Whereas I suppose that's a very important thing. Whenever you borrow money, that's what they're going to look at. But they seem to be a little bit more focused on that. And that actually, I'll be honest with you, after the call with the BDC guy, I felt a little bit, how would you call it, discouraged, because I was like, shucks, how am I going to put this together? Because they said they wanted 20% deposit, but they would also prefer if the seller puts a 20%, what they call take back on it, which means the seller covers 20% or gives 20% of the loan, because then the seller also has some skin in the game. And they just give 60% of the money. Now, the seller clearly, well, I haven't spoken to the seller yet. I've only spoken to the seller's agent, and he clearly said the seller is not going to do any takebacks because the seller is leaving the country. He wants to get out. He wants to take his money and go back to his home country. So yeah, that is a bit of a concern. I didn't feel great after that. I got the forms from BDC, and we'll do a different video where we go through everything they asked for. But for all of the financiers, you're going to have to do a business plan. You have to write a motivation why you think you want to buy the business. I mean, one of the questions they asked us, well, if you had this amount of money, why don't you just start a new business? Can you why buy a business? So there's a lot of questions around that. And yeah, unfortunately, my credit record isn't that great, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then yesterday, on Friday, I actually had a call with RBC and their business department. And that was a lot more enlightening. And I felt a lot better after that call, because what they said, what the gentleman there told me is, he said, look, they prefer to get like a 25% deposit, which is 5% more. They're okay if there's no seller take back. They're not too serious about that. But he also said that their main concern is looking at the business that you are buying's finances. So they really care about whether the business that you are buying is making enough money to actually pay back the loan. Now, we can clearly see on my little spreadsheet that we showed earlier that the business makes more than enough money to pay back the loan. As a matter of fact, and I'm not sure, he actually said that they want to see that the business makes at least 1.25 times as much money as is needed to cover the loan. So if you have to spend $100,000 a year on covering your loan, they want the business to earn at least $125,000, which seems a little bit low. So if there's somebody out there, I mean, you would think that they would want a bigger margin in there. If any of you know more about that, please comment and let me know in the comments. I would be very interested to know if I heard him right or if I've got it right. But that's what he said, as far as I remember. So yeah, RBC seems like a good option. They seem very, very interested in making a deal. I mean, I spoke to them and they were like, hey man, bring the documentation, bring your business plan, bring 3 years audited financial statements from the business and management statements for the last year or portion of the year that's over. And if it makes sense, we will make a plan to schedule we'll make a plan to get you into this business, and we will make it happen. They were even saying that they would talk about maybe the 25% deposit, making it less if the business looks good. And then the other thing that the gentleman also said, because once again, I have a credit score of 649 for some reason, he said that they don't care too much about the credit score. They can work with that. Now, a credit score of 649 is actually poor in Canada. It's just when it goes into the poor level. So that was very interesting. So yeah, I'll give you an update. I've got a call scheduled with the owner of the business on Monday, which is the first time we will be speaking. I've got a couple of other questions that I want to ask him. There's one or two little entries in his financials that I'm not 100% sure of. I have to chat to him about the timelines of when he wants to sell the business or when he wants to really be done, how quick he wants to get the deal done. I have to chat to him about, his staff complement, because there's a couple of questions I have around that. I need to chat to him about whether there is a possibility, because if he does do a take back or a portion owner financing, I mean, the agent said he wouldn't, but who knows? You never know. So check in with that on him. And then, of course, I guess the most important thing is whether he actually has audited financial statements, because without that, the bank won't give me the money. So I'm going to do that Monday morning at 8 o'clock. Hold thumbs for me. It's going to be super exciting. I mean, geez, can you imagine getting to pick my business within 2 weeks of starting my quest? That would be an absolute win. And then we now have to find another one. All right, now let's talk about this whole credit score thing. So you can check your credit score for free on a number of places in Canada, equifax.ca, and then there's the other one, Clear Score as well, where you can check your credit score. There you get your TransUnion credit score. So I checked my credit score. On TransUnion, I've got 669, but on Equifax, I've got 649, and my credit score is really bad. So I went and had a look at it. Why is it so bad? And they really don't give you a lot of information. It's just, I have no delinquencies. I've never paid anything late or not paid anything. All of my things are 100% spot on. But I guess the biggest issue that I have is that I haven't made use of a lot of credit. So I don't really have a credit record. I'm only 4 years in this country, and we bought our car cash, and we bought a whole bunch of stuff cash with the money that we brought. So we don't actually have a record of where we owe money and pay the money back every month. So that's the only thing I can think of. The thing that makes it worse, though, for me, is that we've got a credit card. I've got a couple of credit cards, not huge amounts, but they like it if your credit card usage is less than 30% of the actual limit. And unfortunately, I'm not there. Our usage is a little bit more than 30%. I think mine sits on 70% of the actual limit, just because I didn't care too much. So I'm definitely making a change there. I'm paying off the credit card and getting it to under 30%, just so that we can carry on like that and hopefully improve the credit scores. Although, like I said, the guy at RBC said that doesn't matter too much. So it's going to be a very interesting week coming up. Hold thumbs for me. Monday morning, I'm going to have that chat, and if it pans out and I like it, I'm going to go make an offer on this business. Obviously subject to being able to get financing and subject to doing the due diligence. And in order to make an offer, I have to put down a 5% deposit, which is $20,000 roughly. But we can make that happen. All right, I'll let you know how it goes next week. There's a bunch of other videos where I'm going to be talking about different little pieces, so check it out. Cheers.